episode of Self-Directed. Today, I've got a good friend, Keith Holsten, who's the CEO and founder of KH Financial. Their mission is to make a difference in their clients' lives, their community each and every day. Keith, welcome to Self-Directed.
Thanks, Mitchell. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time out. So I want to just kick things off by, hearing a little bit more about, how long you've been in the business, how you got into the business. Let's start there. How long have you been in the financial advising world?
So 20 years in the financial advisor business, 10 years through an employer, 10 years on my own, operating my own business.
Wow. That's quite a career.
Yeah.
What do you love most about what you do?
What I love most is the opportunity to be able to help our clients through tough financial decisions, help them from making costly mistakes that are all too common in investing. And then also, now that I've established a business and got part of the place where I want to be, the ability to be able to use this as a platform to give back to the community and those causes that we're most passionate about is a huge thing for me, because it's now about more than just the business. It's about the whole community and what we can do. So that's what I'm enjoying the most right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That was a point I definitely wanted to bring up with you. Something I loved, like you're very active and involved, and I feel like you're very invested in the community around you, the local community, and building value beyond your business. Has that always been kind of a core business tenet for you, or how did you develop that kind of philosophy and approach in your business?
So I knew it's something that I wanted to use as a platform when I was successful enough in the business and had enough years under my belt to be able to do it. I didn't know exactly how it was going to be done, how it was going to evolve. And really just over the last 3 or 4 years that I made some business moves, separated from a partner that was holding me back in the areas of totally adopting this business model of giving back in the community. And once I broke free of that, despite a great business relationship, once I broke free of that, it gave me the opportunity to be able to build something that was bigger than myself and help carry forward that vision that I wanted for the business.
Yeah, I like that. When do you feel like, when did you feel like financial advising was a career path that interested you? And you've been in the business for a while, but how'd you get your start?
So I did the typical. I went to school. I got a college degree after a few hard knocks, set out for a couple years, went back to college, got my degree, and wanted to work for corporate America like my uncle had. He moved up in BP Amoco, and he told me that if I would jump every time they told me what to do, and would move every time they told me to, I could be successful and make six figures and do great things. And that's what I wanted to do. So graduated college, typical route, got the first job with Black & Decker DeWalt, big Fortune 500 company, drove about 50 to 80,000 miles a year, flew a couple 100,000 miles a year. It only took me about 2 years of watching travelers and business people in the airport, and the look of exhaustion on their face. You could tell they were away from their family that they love. It was probably putting a great strain on their family, and I could just see it on their faces. And I knew pretty quickly that my dream wasn't really what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I made the decision to come be a financial advisor and move back to Oklahoma from Seattle and those places that we had lived. And first few years, I wasn't sure it was going to be what was for me, because I didn't make a very good living starting out.
Yeah.
I just was tenacious, and I kept after it over and over and over, being politely persistent, and eventually built a lot of trust in a great business. And now I get to do something that I truly enjoy, but not without years of hard work and dedication to get here, for sure.
Yeah. When you were making that decision to switch from what sounds like it was a very stable, predictable route to success to something else, did you make that leap already knowing exactly the next thing? Like, you already knew exactly that you were going to go into financial advising, or was there a process of figuring out what that next step was going to be?
So financial advising and the company that I worked for in the beginning was something I had always thought of, but I was too scared to jump on because I read all the statistics that 80% fail in the first 2 years. And I didn't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. But the more I learned about it, the more I was intrigued by it. I decided it was for me. And then the other thing that really attracted me to it is I knew, based on my bachelor's of business degree and general business that I had in marketing, that one of the only ways I was going to accomplish financially the goals that I wanted for me and my family in Oklahoma was to be in some type of professional sales position. I knew that I could create value and get paid what I was eventually get paid what I thought I was worth and the value I added if I could get into a field like this.
Yeah.
So that was my other driving force, was I knew that's where I could have some value.
That makes sense. Was the goal always to eventually go out on your own, or did that take a decade of doing it over and over again, to get to that point?
Yeah. So it took a decade of growth, of learning more about myself, learning more about my craft to feel confident to do that. And then, quite candidly, what it eventually took was the Great Recession in 07, 08, 09, and a failed marriage and divorce, that I basically stepped back and thought to myself, what is it that I want for the next 20 or 30 years of my life? Because I still have time. We all still have time, whether we're 25, 35, 45, or 55. I feel like we always have time to reinvent ourselves. And so at that point, when you hit what I would consider at the time the bottom, you feel like you have nothing to lose. I felt like that was the time to go forward with my dream of owning my own business and just take a chance, just like I did the 10 years before when I left a guaranteed, basically, corporate job and took a chance.
Yeah. How soon after having that realization that, okay, I want to go start my own business, or at least that's something that I'm going to consider. How long between having that realization and going all in and starting the business? Like how much time transpired between that?
I would say it was at least a couple years.
Yeah.
There was actually a book, and I'm not getting paid to promote it. I wish I was. It's called Who Are You and What Do You Want? And it was actually recommended by a colleague in the business for the company that I was working with at the time before I went on my own.
Yep.
And I spent 2-3 years worth of personal retreats, writing down a timeline of everything that happened in my life from the earliest memory all the way through that current day. And I still go through that process every year of sitting down, stopping for a minute, listening to what's going on around me, cutting out some of the noise and reevaluating if I'm still on the path that I want for myself, or did I get off on a path that someone else set before me that I got distracted and got on. So I try to every year get back through that process just to make sure that I do a self-check, see where I'm at.
Yeah, that's awesome. First of all, that's a great process, and probably something we all need to do more frequently than probably do.
Yeah, it drives me crazy the first few hours of sitting around talking to myself. But once you get past that point, you start getting some constructive thoughts together. It goes really well. I'll just warn people, if they try it, those first few hours are kind of maddening, spent with yourself.
Yeah. I can imagine. I know that when I get too deep into conversation with myself, I sometimes am prone to go on, chasing wild geese as well.
Yep.
So during that same timeline, you said a couple of years lapse, you're doing kind of this, personal reevaluation and kind of coming up with a plan. What are some other things that you started doing to start moving down that path? Or were there specific, tactics that, tactical things that you did to start preparing yourself ultimately for the day when you would start your business?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really started to pay attention to was, I'd always been good at saving money in the market, investing through my retirement plan at work, whatever it was, all the basic things that are great starting points. I encourage everybody to, take part in that, especially if they're getting matching and all those things. But what I really started to think about and really start to focus on is I need to build up a buffer of cash because I want to be able to act on opportunities. And as a business owner, I learned really quickly, even before starting as a business owner, that cash equals opportunity. Also gives me something to fall back on when things aren't going well, which has served me really, really well in this past downturn in this coronavirus, because I had prepared not for the coronavirus, but prepared for the unexpected. And it's helped me ride out the storm and helped me do a much better job for my clients. So I would say that's one of the things probably very early on, even before I became a business owner, that I honed in on is cash management and living off far less than I make.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that a lot of people, you probably know the statistics better than me, but I keep seeing a number pop up. I think it's like $1,000 or something. Like the average American has less than $1,000 saved. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that are suddenly like, oh my gosh, I wasn't planning for this type of calamity. It's disastrous now.
Exactly.
So taking kind of that same, that same logic and things that you feel like you did right, for young people out there that have entrepreneurial ambition, whether they know specifically what it is or not, what are some things that, that teenager or 18 to early 20s person should start doing, or good advice you'd like to give to those, that demographic, things they can start doing now before they start their business, even if they don't know when, they don't know what idea they have, like what are things people can start doing?
I think it depends on the person, but just based on some recent things that I've done around my household, hiring different contractors, doing different things, I see a huge opportunity where young people, even if they're going to college, if they're willing and they enjoy to work with their hands, there's a lot of things, side hustles that they could be learning on the side. They have YouTube videos. They can go learn anything, anywhere, anytime. Where I, as a kid, I had, if I loved woodworking and I wanted to learn more about my craft, I had to wait till once a week when Bob Vila came on This Old House to be able to learn woodworking.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a huge opportunity for young people while they're going to college, while they're going to a trade school. Maybe they go straight to work. But if they'll have a passion and a mind for learning and an open mind, there's nothing that they can't learn and skills that they can't gain in the meantime, instead of sitting around playing, video games or, I'm as guilty as anybody. I went out to the bar, I partied with my friends, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have any fun, but there's so many things that they could be doing with their free time to further their skills and what they could add value to in the meantime while they're figuring it out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there are so many cool, asynchronous learning opportunities that didn't used to be around. I mean, even when I was younger, like social media was just taking off. YouTube was still, a relatively new phenomenon. I think as I was entering college, that's where it was really starting to become popular, but the content wasn't there that's there today. There's so much stuff. I mean, I learn things on there in podcasts all the time. So that's a great tip. Going along that same vein, it was speaking to young people again and parents and thinking about what's going on in the world right now. There's so much of a narrative built around college and uncertainty, rising costs of college, student debt, are we entering a recession? There's all these things swirling around or whatever. Just kind of your general take as you think about the uncertainty of present day and, just sound personal finance advice. Like what are your views on a young person today going to college, but having to accumulate a lot of student debt in order to do so?
Yeah. So this hits pretty close to home because I've got teenage girls, two of which are college age or out of college, one that would be going soon, depending on what she decides that she wants to do. I just think that it's so difficult. I remember back being a young person, it's so difficult unless you just grew up knowing you wanted to be a doctor or you wanted to be an accountant because that's what your family did or whatever. It's very, very difficult to figure out what you want to do because you likely haven't seen it done or you haven't experienced it. I just think that, if a person's going to go to college, there needs to be a plan to be able to pay for part of it, to reduce the student loans, or it needs to be done while someone is focusing on something else that they want to do. I just think that, I know in our public school system, which I support wholeheartedly, I know there's always this push with our kids of, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, and you need to go to college. And I have a college degree. I think it has some value, but the value that it has is what you make of it. It doesn't buy you anything now that you can't probably go get on your own in most cases, unless you're being very specific to the accounting field, medical field. Of course, those things are different.
Yeah.
But I just think it has to be a conversation that parents, a blunt conversation is one that we've tried to have in our home. It's tough, but it has to be a conversation, because most families are not going to be able to foot the bill for college.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a different conversation than it used to be. And it's not a guarantee of success at all.
Yeah. So another thing I'd love to hear your thoughts on, I think that a lot of young people don't see this side of the picture. I think the cat's out of the bag that the cost of college is going up and that, people have debt. But when I talk to a lot of younger people, and I talk to people my age or even a few more years out of college, one of the recurring themes that has come up is, I wish I would have known a little bit more about, student debt and what that means for my life, and like paying it back, and like the actual implications of student debt. You've worked with people that are, later on in their careers, a wide range of ages as well. What is the impact of student debt on those people who amass it? Like, what's the good, bad, ugly of those, of the people who do come out with a significant debt burden? Yeah.
So in the right situation, given the right occupation, a lot of our clients with student debt are willing or are able in their late 20s, early 30s to pay that loan back. And, they're going to be in relatively good shape if they chose a career that pays them well and is readily available that people need.
Yeah.
In other is where maybe that degree wasn't necessarily a match, or maybe it took longer to land a job in the field that they wanted, or maybe they never did. Those student loans are carrying into people that are, our clients that are still in their 40s or even their 50s. And the implication that that's had is these folks are, because of that student loan, are way behind the curve on what they need to be saving, investing for their future. But more than that, I think it's limiting people in being able to invest in themselves. It's hard to invest in yourself to try to start a business, a side hustle, if you're burdened with student loans and debt. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's what I want to say. I read this somewhere recently, like the number of new businesses starting over the past decade has been on a plateau and steady decline. And, I don't think you have to be making wild speculations to think that maybe student debt has something to do with that. That does, it's a little bit different decision when you've got a parachute behind you. Yeah. So go ahead. Yeah. So beyond making the financial decision about college and that, that aside, like what are some other personal financial, I don't want to say just mistakes, but what are other personal financial practices, things that people get right or should be doing, and things that people get wrong earlier on that, if they started doing these things differently, it'd save them a lot of grief down the road?
Yeah. So, I read a lot, and the basic thought of financial gurus on TV and on different forums is basically that, if you don't buy your $6 Starbucks latte, you have X amount of money by the time you're 65 years old and you're throwing away this money. And while all that's true, that's not what I'm seeing is holding people back from achieving their goal of retirement or their goal of being able to travel and do things. It's not necessarily those things. The thing I'm seeing take away from people's dreams, ambitions, and goals is they own too much house too soon. They own too much car too soon. and it's all on debt. And that's a lot. That is causing them to not be able to invest enough in their future and their investments and their retirement at work. It's causing them to not be able to start a side hustle. And then you put student loans and other debt, credit card debt in there, and it's putting people behind the eight ball for decades. And it's almost, without some serious discipline, it's almost impossible to catch up. The single biggest thing I see causing people to not achieve their goals is buying way too much house. And my hope is that the millennial generation is going to continue to get that right and remain more mobile and not stuck in one place with a mortgage that they can't afford and that they're miserable in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I mean, personally, like I've rented mine, my entire career and life. And I think that the flexibility has been awesome. Like, when a new opportunity presents itself, to be able to just drop everything and move and not have to have that, that lurking fear in the back of my mind. Like, I've got a mortgage. What do I do with my house?
Yeah.
When you think about somebody that's making that decision, I want to buy a house or whatever, depending, let's say like the person in their 20s or whatever, how would you recommend they approach decisions like that? I know a common theme, like people my age and friends, like even those of us who have been very mobile, that conversation about once per year as a lease renewal comes up is like, should I keep burning this much cash paying for a lease, or should I start building some equity in a house? Like, what's the right way for young people to think about that?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with home ownership. It's been good for me. But you have to be reasonably sure that you're going to stay in an area for a while. You have to consider what's going on around you in that housing environment. Should you have to sell in the next 2 or 3 years to go pursue an opportunity that you're really fascinated by. And the other thing is, if the median, like for instance in my community, if the median home value is $180,000 for a nice house, and the bank tells you that you can go buy a $400,000 house, and you're 29 years old and you want to leave your opportunities open, buy the $180,000 house. Just because a bank and a real estate agent is having you approved for a $400,000 house, it doesn't mean you should buy one.
Yeah.
If other house would do just fine, you're not going to put yourself then in a position where if you move for another opportunity and it took 6 months to sell your home, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if you own that $400,000 house that's 50% of your gross income, and you have to move or want to move for an opportunity, and your house doesn't sell in a couple of months, you're out of luck. You're in a box. And so I think home ownership is great. I just think too early on, too young, people stretch too far.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So while we're on this same topic of like stretching too far, what advice would you give to the young person when it comes to credit cards?
Yeah. So another conversation I have with my kids. I think a credit card can be a good tool. It's very hard for most people to manage it, and it was for me when I was younger. In theory, it's a great way if you pay most of it off every month to build credit. And why your credit score doesn't go up if you don't just pay the whole thing off all in 1 month, I don't understand that. There's carry some little balance to show that you have an open credit.
Yeah.
Makes no sense to me, but that's the way that it works. So if someone's disciplined and they're just putting their gas on there for $200 or $300 a month, and they're paying all that off every month except $50 or $30, that could be a good tool to start to help them build some credit. But a lot of times people will fall into a trap of going ahead and charging more up to that. Credit card company raises their credit limit. Pretty soon they got a $2,000 credit card bill when the intent was to build their credit.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily against them, but they have to be used very, very carefully.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Is there any other just general life, career, financial advice that you think it's important for for the 18 to 25-year-old who wants to get ahead, who wants to maintain opportunities that they may not know about down the road? Like, any general advice that you would give to that person?
And this will sound really oversimplified. I still do this to date today. But you have to pay yourself first before you pay anybody else. My grandpa used to preach that to me when I was a little kid, but you have to pay yourself first. So what that means to me, or what that would mean to me if I was in my 20s, is, let's say I land my first career, or I'm running a side hustle, a business, and I'm making $50,000 a year. I'm going to try to live on 25 to 30 a year. And I'm going to so basically it's oversimplified, but what I would do is, if I could live on $2,000 a month, I'd have $2,000 in my paycheck direct deposited into bank A.
Yeah.
And I would pretend that is all I make for now.
Yeah.
And I would take the rest of the money, maybe invest it in the market, maybe not. Maybe I take that other $2,000 a month and put it into a savings account for a year so I can go start that business that I want to try to start. So the key is to pay yourself first, then pay your bills. That doesn't mean you skip on your bills, but the easiest way I found to do that is have a couple different direct deposits going. So you have this account that this is all I make, and you convince yourself that this is all I make. And then when you get a raise, you take some of the raise and you give yourself a raise. You take some of the raise and you keep investing in yourself.
Yeah, that's great advice. You spurred up one more question that I have is for the young person who knows they do want to start a business someday, and they don't know what, they don't know when, but they want to start positioning themselves correctly from a financial perspective. They're disciplined or whatever. What steps should they take in terms of the financial vehicles that they choose and the different investment decisions? Like, just broadly speaking, knowing that someday I want some of that cash available for a business.
Yeah. So me personally, if I was a young person, didn't have a lot of commitments in my life yet, I would take a job in that field working for someone, and I wouldn't necessarily enjoy working for next to nothing, but I would do it looking back for the opportunity to gain the experience and get paid something. Yeah. I mean, even if I'm getting paid next to nothing, I'm getting paid more than a $50,000 student loan in college.
Yeah.
So I would invest however I had to put myself in that position to learn more about that field, that trade, whatever it is, and take that sacrifice, make that sacrifice early on in life, because when you start to have kids and a career and a mortgage and car payments, it gets harder and harder and harder to make the sacrifice to put yourself in a position to be successful in something that you truly love to do. And that's why people end up doing stuff for their entire lifetime that they hate, because they got stuck and they put it off too long.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I thought of a really quick story regarding making a sacrifice to get where you want to go. I had a lady that, when I worked for a brokerage firm before I went out on my own, I would train new advisors and take them around and teach them how to knock doors of businesses and houses, which, by the way, is no fun.
Yeah, I've been there.
But she ultimately didn't make it. It wasn't because she couldn't do it and didn't want to do it. She ran out of money and she ran out of time, because it's very hard to get started. But rather than just tuck her tail and get in the unemployment line, she immediately took a job in a Starbucks in a wealthy neighborhood suburb in Oklahoma City area and became a barista. So she went from being on the path to be a financial advisor to working as a barista serving coffee in an affluent neighborhood area. Long story short, she got to know everybody and was the friendliest employee in that Starbucks, with all of those business owners and entrepreneurs coming in there every day. And within a year, she landed the job in the field and career that she wanted, with an awesome pay, doing what she loved, because she had given something 100%, even though it wasn't in the field she even wanted to be in, it was beneath her, but she never thought it was beneath her. And she put in the work and the time and ended up within a year accomplishing what she wanted to accomplish. So I think that's a great story about putting in the time, effort, sacrifice, and the pay cut to get where you want to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that story, and a cool way to reset and start over and just like figure it out versus, being a victim.
But while she was trying to be creative, she was making a little bit of money and she could pay her bill.
Which is like the most important thing. Once you get that, go cover that. I know that a lot of people feel the pressure. Like, if I'm not doing exactly what I want to do right now, I'm a failure. No, like, if you're taking care of yourself, that's okay. It's a hard thing for us all to figure it out, regardless of how old we are, how much experience we have.
And I think a lot of young people, I know I felt this way. You think you got to accomplish everything right now when you're 22 years old, you're 25 years old. In today's world, most of the young people today in their 20s are probably going to be able, with health, to work another 50 years.
Yeah.
So if it takes them 5 years to land what they want to do and figure it out on the long road of life, that's like no time at all. But when you're 25, it seems like forever. But it's not.
I was having this conversation the other day. It's like, I've got to the point in my career now where now I think about it much more like it's Rocky Balboa in the ring. You just got to survive enough rounds to figure it out versus like, stepping into the ring and winning the heavyweight title your first time boxing. Like, sometimes you got to slug it out and survive, keep getting up. So, and
that was my whole career starting out as a financial advisor. I knew every door that got slammed in my face, every person that hollered at me was putting me one step closer to my goal of being a successful advisor and being able to help clients and then finally get to enjoy the work that I do. Yeah. So every door was another opportunity, another step down the road.
That's awesome. Well, Keith, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time and thanks for your insight and stories. This is going to be great, and I'm looking forward to sharing it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mitchell.
Yeah, you bet.